So, the T20 World Cup is right around the corner. And for a team like Nepal, every single decision, every match is absolutely critical. But the announcement of their final preparation tour has kicked up a huge storm of debate among the fans. Today, we're going to get right into it and break down exactly why this road to the World Cup has become so controversial.
It really all boils down to one simple question, doesn't it? Is this series of matches in Sri Lanka and India the vital, tough practice a World Cup team needs? Or is it a massive missed opportunity to really test themselves against the best of the best?
You know, to really get the passion behind this whole debate, you have to understand this feeling. This phrase has been all over social media, and it basically means BCCI has betrayed us again. It really captures that deep sense of frustration that the Indian Cricket Board, their powerful next-door neighbor, didn't step up and offer stronger opponents for this all-important tour.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at why this whole tour just split opinion right down the middle. Then, we'll get into both sides of the argument, the case for why everyone's so disappointed, and then the more pragmatic defense of the whole thing. After that, we'll look at the actual nuts and bolts schedule, before finally digging into what this all means for Nepal's game plan heading into the big tournament.
Okay, so here's the setup. The Cricket Association of Nepal, or CAN, announces the team's final prep tour before the World Cup. Now, you'd think any international practice would be good news, right? But the reaction was instantly divided. A mix of, okay, phew, at least it's something, and on the other hand, just widespread frustration.
And on the surface, the plan makes a lot of sense. After a training camp at home in Rupandehi, the team is heading to the two countries co-hosting the World Cup, India and Sri Lanka. The goal? Get some crucial game time in conditions that are similar to what they'll face when it really counts. But, as they say, the devil is in the details.
All right, let's get into the heart of the controversy. Why are so many fans just, well, disappointed? This is the side of the argument that says this tour just isn't up to snuff for a team that has serious World Cup ambitions.
And this right here, this really gets to the core of the frustration. The hope, the dream really, was for matches against an India A or B side. You know, a real step up in competition. But the reality? They're playing Sri Lanka's A team and the Mumbai Cricket Association's President's XI, which, let's be honest, is basically a strong club-level side. It's just not what fans were hoping for.
And this quote just perfectly captures that deep-seated fear among the fans. Playing against what's seen as weaker opposition, it kind of creates a lose-lose situation. If Nepal wins, well, they were supposed to, so it doesn't prove much. But if they lose, that's a massive hit to their confidence, and it leads to the big question. If they can't beat these teams, how on earth can they compete with the big dog?
So the criticisms really boil down to a few key things. There's this feeling that the BCCI is being pretty unsupportive, especially when you see how boards like England's go out of their way to help associate nations like Scotland. Then there's this painful memory of the 2014 World Cup, where a lack of good preparation was blamed for some key losses. And at the end of the day, it's this nagging feeling that this schedule just isn't good enough to get them ready for powerhouses like England and the West Indies.
But, like any good debate, there's another side to this story. And it's a very practical one. So let's flip the coin and look at the pragmatic defense of the tour, and why the cricket board probably saw this as the best option they had on the table. And really, this simple phrase just sums it all up. Instead of just staying home and training in the nets, the team is actually getting out there. They're playing competitive matches, getting that valuable time in the middle. It might not be the dream schedule everyone wanted, but it's a whole lot better than the alternative, which was no matches at all.
And this isn't just about playing games for the sake of it. There are some real, clear strategic goals here. Number 1, shifting from just practice mode into a real game mindset. 2, getting used to the specific kinds of pitches in Mumbai, which is huge. And 3, and this is crucial, it's about settling those final debates about who should be in the team and building up that match fitness right before the tournament starts.
Now here's a key piece of context that I think gets lost in all the noise. India's big domestic 50-over tournament, the Vijay Hazare Trophy, was happening at the exact same time. What does that mean? Well, it means most of the top-tier players who would make up an India A team were already busy playing for their state teams. So this schedule was probably the best realistic alternative the BCCI could have offered.
Okay, so we've heard both sides of the argument. Let's get down to the brass tacks. What does this tour actually look like day to day? Here's the full breakdown.
Looking at the timeline, you can see it's a whirlwind. The tour kicks off in Sri Lanka with some practice days and then 3 T20s against their A side. Then boom, it's off to Mumbai for 2 more T20s against the MCA President's XI, including a day-nighter. That is 5 competitive T20 matches in less than 2 weeks. It's going to be a serious workout for the team.
Now, you might be sitting there wondering, okay, but why Sri Lanka? Well, there might be a very clever, strategic reason for that. There's been some chatter that Bangladesh, who is one of Nepal's opponents in the World Cup group stage, might actually have their games moved to Sri Lanka. If that happens, then this part of the tour suddenly goes from just being simple practice to a brilliant strategic move. It would give Nepal a huge advantage by already being familiar with the conditions.
So what's the endgame with all of this? Beyond just the practice, this tour is the last chance for Coach Monty Desai and the team management to answer some really critical questions and finally lock in their World Cup strategy.
And when you boil it all down, there are really two big questions hanging over this team. Two major puzzles that these 5 matches are absolutely designed to solve.
First up, the classic spinner question. Who gets that final spot in the squad? Are they going to go with the reliable experience of a left-armer Lalit Rajbanshi? Or will they take a bit of a gamble on the exciting and kind of mysterious spin of Sheer Mala, who just had an amazing domestic season? This tour is pretty much their final audition.
And then there's the age-old problem for Nepal, the power play. Historically, they've struggled to get off to a flying start, often just getting 30 or 40 runs in those first 6 overs. On the high-scoring grounds you find in Mumbai, that's just not going to cut it. This tour is their chance to test out a much more aggressive approach at the top of the order. So, you can really think of this tour as the final exam. For the players who are on the edge of the squad, it's their last chance to prove their form and lock down a spot in that starting lineup. And for the coach, it's his last opportunity to see these guys in real match situations and decide on that final playing 11 for the World Cup opener.
And let's not forget what's waiting for them at the actual tournament. I mean, they've been thrown into a brutal group. They are up against 2 former T20 world champions in England and the West Indies, the always tough Bangladesh, and a dangerous Italian side. The challenge ahead of them is absolutely immense.
So, we've looked at the controversy. We've looked at the practical logic. It's a prep plan that has some obvious flaws, but it also has some really clear goals. So the ultimate question is this: will this path, flaws and all, be enough to finally get Nepal that famous giant-killing upset on the world's biggest stage? Is this what it takes to get to the Super 8s? Well, only time is going to tell.